Today we're going to be running through how to add a task in the Managed app and just the best approach in regards to having all of your communication just in regards to your investment properties and your property management day-to-day life through the Managed system. I think the beauty of the system is you can have everything in a centralized spot. That way you're communicating with your owners through Managed, you're communicating with your tenants through Managed. If you have any additional team members that join your company or your business, instead of having emails everywhere trying to find information, you can just jump onto the system, review a property profile or a property card and see all of the conversations that are had between the owners and the tenants just in sort of that one centralized spot. So I think that's the beauty about using the action center and communicating through the system for those general tasks, maintenance tasks, bill items and whatnot. It's also, again, a really good healthy habit to get your owners potentially adding in tasks themselves and getting your tenants to add in tasks through the system. So an owner and a tenant only have the option to add in on their side a general or a maintenance task, but you of course can assign them to a bill task or a condition task, and they can jump onto their portal. They can see that they have been assigned to those additional tasks and as well communicate about that specific item. So to add a task, you've got two options. You can do so by going through the action center. So you could just search the property in the top right hand corner. And then select add a task. Then at this point in time, you get to choose your type of task. So you have a various default options of types of tasks that you might want to use. If you have the ability to create custom tasks and have that feature, you can also then choose from that custom task list that you've created. But for the purpose of this one, I'm just going to add in a lease termination task. Who I'm going to assign it to, I might just assign it to myself as a property manager. I might choose someone else from my team to assign that task to. Who do I want following the task? For the purpose of this one, I want to assign the owner and I want to assign the tenant. If you do not have the owner or a tenant as a task follower, if they were to log into their profile, they won't be able to see the task. Now, they can get notified if you reply to them in the task, but if they were to click view or reply back, it's not actually going to load correctly. So you need to make sure that if you are wanting to communicate with the owners and the tenants and you want those owners and tenants to communicate back via the task, you need to make them a task follower. You can choose your priority. We have various options, or you might just leave it as is. Now, popping in your title and your description. So for this one, I'm going to pop in the title. Now, the title and the description can be seen by all task followers. So I just suggest with this one, you keep your title and your description a little bit more basic, and then any sort of notes that you wish to include, maybe from an agent's point of view. If you just want to write some internal notes, I will show you exactly the best approach to do that thereafter. You're going to enter in a due date. So maybe specifically for this property, I'm going to pop the due date for the end of lease date. I'm just going to keep my action date as today. Now, sometimes you might have an action date. So an action date might be when exactly you want to start actioning this task. And then the due date is, I guess, you potentially giving yourself that completion or when it needs to be completed by. And then I'm going to pop my status to scheduled. And then if I need any attachments, maybe like a termination notice, I would upload that here. I'm going to click save. Now, once you have entered in a task, moving it from draft to scheduled, the owner and the tenant are going to receive a notification that they've been added to a task. So they're not going to get all of the information in the title and the description like we added. They're only going to get a notification that they've been added to a task. So it's going to look a little bit something like this. It's just going to look like this, that they've been added to a task. They can click and view the task. That will allow them to log into the system and see the task that they've been assigned to. Again, it doesn't give any information. So in order, if you actually want to start communicating to the tenant and letting them know the conversations that you have had or need to have, that's when you need to actually start replying in the task specifically to who you wish to notify or communicate to. So for the purpose of this one, it's a 30-day end of lease notice that the owner has asked me to give the tenant. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write some internal notes. So like I said, there are some notes that I need to make on the property that I don't want to include in the title and the description, noting that this can be seen by all of the task followers. So I'm just going to select the reply button. Who I'm going to reply to, I'm just going to choose agency. So this is where it might come in and you add in your internal notes for the property. So as you can see here, I have just made a little internal note replying to agency, just with some comments of the conversation I would have had with the tenant and the owner, just regarding this specific task itself. Now, something that I would do if I was a property manager and I'm adding this task into the system, because I want to make sure that I have that communication log time-stamped and dated, I'm going to confirm my conversations that I've had with the owner and that I've had with the tenant. So what I'm going to do, starting off with the owner, I'm just going to select reply. I'm going to specifically choose the owner itself and confirm the conversation I had about this termination. Now I have saved that communication to the owner and let them know of the conversation we have had. The owner is now going to receive an email with this reply. So that owner is going to get an email specifically with the reply to the task stating it's an end of lease task notice for the property, and this is our communication. So remember before how I said when you add a title and a description, they don't get notified specifically on the title and the description. As soon as you start replying and making those replies, that's when they're going to know specifically what the task entails. So I have confirmed that conversation that I've had in regards to the tenant, just letting them know that they would be required to vacate as per that notice. I could send them the notice directly to their email. I might add that notice here under the attachments and let them know that is attached. But just letting everyone know in regards to this specifically, because I also have a colleague named Sarah who works with me and she does all of my on-market properties. What I'm going to do in regards to this task is I'm going to assign Sarah, who is another property manager or a user through the system, to this task so she knows what she is required to do. And she will also be notified in her emails on the items that she has to complete through this task, or at least be notified that she's assigned to at least do some sort of work, which is contacting that tenant and letting them know of any properties that she might have upcoming on that rental market to help them move. In order for me to assign Sarah, all I need to go and do is select edit up the top, click Sarah's name, select save. And just for the purpose of this, I'm going to reply as an agency note to Sarah and let her know that she's been assigned to this task and take action. Done. So anytime you have a task, you can see that there are these task bars up the top. So there's draft, scheduled, and completed. Anytime a task is listed under draft, keep in mind that an owner and a tenant, even if they are assigned to it, are unable to see it in their task tab. So it needs to be moved from a draft status to either a scheduled or an entered. Every different type of task has different statuses, but as long as it's moved from a draft to either a scheduled or an entered, an owner or a tenant can log into their system if they've been assigned and can see that under their task tab. Now, any type of task that you have listed in a property can also be found under the Action Center. So if I was to go to the Action Center, I was to search up the top all of these different types category statuses and property managers. For this one, it was a lease termination task. I'm going to search lease termination. I'm just going to filter this as is. I'm going to choose Sarah, or I could clear that filter and bring up all the lease termination tasks. So I can see that that pops up. But if I had a whole page worth or 2 pages worth of lease terminations and I wanted to filter it down that extra category or that extra status, I can do so by selecting the category if there was one, or a status. So instead of going from draft to scheduled, I might click scheduled and it would bring up the scheduled statuses. If I was to say, oh, has anyone from my team missed a lease termination task and scheduling it, and I'm just going to double check and make sure that none are left in draft, I would click draft, I would select filter, and I would see, okay, no one has accidentally left a lease termination task in draft. So that's how you add a task into the system. I will be doing some further videos on action centers, navigating the action center, the best way to approach them as a property manager, and maybe some tips and tricks on how to clean up your action center and get things organized too.